Hey everybody, I'm here today to talk to you about 4 ways to make your car faster for cheap. If you want to add horsepower or add torque to your car and you don't want to spend a lot of money, this video is for you. Method number 1, modification number 1, a cold air intake. A cold air intake is by far one of the most common things, one of the most common mods that people do to their car. Why? Because it increases the power output of your car, it increases the throttle response of your car as well, and it's relatively cheap. What's cool about a cold air intake is that it's actually easy enough that you can even install it yourself most of the time, which will save you some money. So if you're a do-it-yourselfer, you can look up instructions for your specific car online for how to install a cold air intake, and you'll see that it's actually really simple, okay? So a cold air intake will increase the power output of your car because it allows your car to suck in more air, to intake more air. And it goes hand in hand with modification number 2, a larger throttle body. Okay, if you get a larger throttle body, it's going to allow your car to intake even more air, because the throttle body is basically what regulates the amount of air that your car is taking in. So if you get a larger throttle body, it's going to make sure that your car can take in even more air, and more air will lead to more horsepower because it's an essential part of the process of running an engine. Okay, more air will lead to more horsepower. So if you combine the first 2 modifications, the cold air intake and the larger throttle body, your car is going to be intaking a lot more air, which is going to lead to more horsepower. But just being able to take in more air isn't the best idea without being able to output more air. So that leads us to modifications number 3 and 4. Modification number 3 is a high flow catalytic converter. Now, a catalytic converter, when it's on your car from the factory in an effort to save money and production cost, is very restrictive, and it's also better for the emission standards and so forth. But there are high flow catalytic converters that you can get that will still comply with the emission standards for where you live. So with that being said, a high flow catalytic converter will allow your car to output more air. So the first 2 modifications were geared towards taking in more air, which will increase the horsepower, but a high flow cat will allow your car to let more air out, which increases the airflow overall, which once again is less restrictive, which increases the power output of your car. Now, a high flow catalytic converter generally isn't something that you can install yourself unless you have a lift and unless you have the right tools. But with that being said, as a modification overall, it's not that expensive and it lasts a long time. It's a modification that's probably going to last for a good portion of the lifetime of your car, depending on how long you plan on owning the car. And modification number 4, the last mod in this video, once again has to do with the air output of the car, which will increase the power, the horsepower and torque. They are headers, okay? Now, headers are a great modification because in an effort, once again, to save production costs, you get an exhaust manifold that goes basically from the engine to the start of the exhaust pipe or pipes, and that is quite restrictive. It doesn't have the most effective way, it's not the most effective way to move the air out of the engine. So with that being said, if you get headers, whether they are long headers or short headers, they're going to be more effective at moving that air out of the engine, which will lead to more horsepower, more torque, better throttle response, and a whole bunch of other great things that will increase the overall performance of your car. So those are the 4 modifications that are relatively inexpensive. Some of them you can install yourself. Some are easy to install yourself. Others you can still do, but they're a little bit more difficult to install yourself. But those 4 are relatively inexpensive. They're affordable. You can save on labor costs if you do all of the work or some of the work yourself. They will increase the power of your car through the air movement, okay? The first 2 are geared towards intaking air, and the second 2 are geared towards exhausting the air or outputting the air. It's literally that simple. Those are basically my 4 favorite modifications because they're relatively cheap and they increase the power of your car. They make your car faster, more horsepower, more torque, better throttle response. What more can you ask for? And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.